screen as well?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
We can
So
see.
we will start with the verse and then we'll continue. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today's verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, verse 3. Eva Maishe Kritasauhridartha Janeshu Deham Bharavartikeshu Griheshu Jayat Majarati Matsu Na Priti Yukta Yavadartascha Loke Eva Maishe Kritasauhridartha Janeshu Deham Bharavartikeshu Griheshu Jayat Majarati Matsu Na Priti Yukta Yavadartascha Loke. Uh, I need to find a way to shift the slide. So let me stop the sharing. Uh, do you know if I need to share the file and not the desktop? Because I have the PDF open.
So,
Prabhu, you need to share
Password?
the screen.
I'm sorry?
you want to share
Dasraj, Prabhu?
different?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a file. Yeah, I have a Adobe PDF open.
Okay, so you can share as a desktop, Prabhu, instead of application or.
Okay, but then I'm not able to move the next page.
No, you can share your desktop instead of one app. So then whatever you.
Oh, okay. I think now I got it. Okay.
Yeah, if
Sorry
you
about
share
that.
the desktop, you can whatever screen you open, we can see that.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's working. Yeah. Sorry for the
Okay,
inconvenience.
no problem.
Word for word. Ye, those who, va, or, mai, unto me, Ishe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krita Sauhridartha, very eager to develop love in a relationship of Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya, Janeshu, to people, Dehambara Vartikeshu, who are interested only in maintaining the body, not in spiritual salvation, Griheshu, to the home, Jaya, wife, Atmaja, children, Rati, wealth or friends, Matsu, consisting of, Na, not, Priti Yuktaha, very attached, Yavadartaha, who live by collecting only as much as required, Cha, and Loke, in the material world. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. Though they are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. Purport. Whether he is an impersonalist or a devotee, one who is actually interested in advancing spiritually should not mingle with those who are simply interested in maintaining the body by means of the so called advancement of civilization. Those who are interested in spiritual life should not be attached to homely comforts in the company of wife, children, friends, and so forth. Even if one is a grihastha and has to earn his livelihood, he should be satisfied by collecting only enough money to maintain body and soul together. One should not have more than that, nor less than that. As indicated herein, a householder should endeavor to earn money for the execution of Bhakti Yoga, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. A householder should lead such a life that he gets full opportunity to hear and chant. He should worship the deity at home, observe festivals, invite friends in, and give them prasad. A householder should earn money for this purpose, not for sense gratification. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So at the outset, I would like to thank His Grace Pyari Mohan Prabhuji and Her Grace Jiva Ushadi Mataji for all the services they have done in service of Guru and Gauranga. And I have fond memories of meeting them, visiting them a while back, must be 5-6 years ago in Hartford, Connecticut. In fact, I even gave a Bhagavatam impromptu class, I still remember. So I have fond memories. I'm looking forward to visiting and, take darshan of the deities in the glorious grand new temple. Happy to be among devotees. So today's verse is basically one of the many verses of Canto 5, Chapter 5, the opening verses. And these are King Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons. He is giving a farewell address. He is on the way to the forest. He's on the way to, so they're having a retirement get together. And this is his farewell address. And all his sons are very eagerly listening to the advice given by King Rishabhadev. So, who is King Rishabhadev? So, Rishabhadev appeared as a son of Maharaj Nabhi. This is a famous and glorious lineage. And he was a son of Maharaj Nabhi. Again, my understanding is this was based on in the Satya Yuga. He was appreciated by the people as the most exalted and beautiful personality of that age. His poise, influence, strength, enthusiasm, bodily luster, and other transcendental qualities were beyond compare. So, King Rishabhadev, from the outset, he was special. He was one of a kind, and soon we will find out why that is the case. The word Rishabha refers to the best. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna addresses Arjuna as Bharatarshabha, oh best of the Bharatas. So the word Rishabha refers to the best or the supreme. Due to the super excellent attributes of the son of Maharaj Nabhi, the king named his son Rishabha, or the best. His influence was incomparable, so we can see that King Nabhi was able to recognize right from childbirth, Rishabha was special, and to commemorate his speciality, he gave him the name Rishabdev. Upon receiving Rishabdev, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as his son. Okay, so now we understand all those super excellent qualities that Rishabdev exhibited at birth is due to the fact that he is an avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Later on, in his teachings, he will also, reinforce that information that he is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, upon receiving Rishabhadev, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as his son, King Nabhi began to raise him very carefully. After that, he entrusted the ruling power to him, and retiring from family life, lived at Badrikashram completely engaged in the worship of Vasudev, the Supreme Lord. So we find that even great emperors, rulers of the universe, they followed the Varnashram system, which is Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. And so we find that once, King Rishabdev attains the age where he can, take over the reins of administration, King Nabi is more than happy to hand over the rule and walk away, completely, walk away from the whole, all the riches. We've seen these examples time and again that kings would walk away, into forest life, leaving everything behind, So this is another example of King Nabhi retiring from family life and, moving to Badrikashram to engage 100% in the worship of Vasudev, the Supreme Lord. Vanam gatoyat harimashrayetat. In Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, he says that one should go to the forest to take refuge of Lord Hari. So, to follow social customs, Lord Rishabdev for a while became a student in the Gurukula. Again, this is prior to King Nabhi, taking retirement. So again, we find Varnashram system in practice. So even though he was a son of a great emperor, he still attended Gurukula as a menial servant of his guru. No pretensions, no throwing his weight around. So he was a brahmachari for the early part of his life, even though, more so because, even though he's none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to set an example, he, attended Gurukula as a dutiful student. And after returning, he followed the orders of his guru and accepted a wife named Jayanti, who had been given to him by the king of heaven, Indra. He begot 100 sons in the womb of Jayanti. So, Putrarte kriyate bharya, Putra pinda udaka kriya. So he took on a wife for the sake of, extending his lineage, begetting 100 sons. Again, he's a Supreme Personality of Godhead, so there is no limit to his prowess, and he begot 100 sons. To teach the general populace, King Rishabdev performed many sacrifices and taught his sons how to rule the citizens. So, just like he was taught by his father how to rule the country, how to be a model king, how to take care of his citizens. So, likewise, King Rishabdev, not only did he rule in a wonderful manner, he was also teaching his sons along the way how to rule the citizens. Of these 100 sons, again, him being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we find that all of his sons were glorious. Of these 100 sons, the eldest was known as Bharata. Now, Bharata, we are all familiar, Bharat Varsha, Bharat Mata. Uh, so it is said in scriptures there were three Bharatas in three separate yugas. There is the king Bharata, the son of Rishabhadeva, in the Satya Yuga. Then Treta Yuga, of course, Lord Ramachandra's own brother, Bharata. He was another glorious king. Of course, he was ruling in proxy while Lord Ramachandra was in exile in the forest. And finally, Shakuntala, uh, her son Bharata, born of King Dushyant and Shakuntala, so he was in the Dwapara Yuga. So these are the three Bharatas, illustrious Bharatas. So you could say that the term Bharata Varsha came because of all the three kings. Either way. So King Bharata was the foremost of the among the three Bharatas. Since the reign of Maharaj Bharata, this planet has been called Bharata Varsha. So he was the first and foremost of the three Bharatas. Rishabhadev's other sons were headed to Kushavarta, Ilavarta, Brahmavarta, Malaya, Ketu, Bhadrasena, Indrasprit, Vidarbha, and Kikata. So these were all the the separate kingdoms that they were sent to rule over. So we find that the king's sons became kings naturally. There is a propensity for a king's son to excel in the kingly duties, but that is not to say a king's son cannot become a brahmana or a vaishya or even a shudra. So again we find the chaturvarna being practiced here. During the reign of those sons, the world was very happy in all respects. Again, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so they were, able to replicate. They were able to follow in his footsteps of how to rule because they were taught by the best. So Bhagavatam says that during their reign of those sons, the world was very happy. There were also other sons named Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Prabuddha, Pippalayana, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Karabhajana. So again, those of us that are familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam can recognize that these are none other than the Navayogendras. So that will come later cantos of Bhagavatam, where the Navayogendra preaches, to a single disciple. There will be 9 gurus. These are the 9 gurus preaching to a single disciple. One of the king whose name I forget at this time. So these were the Navayogendras. So we find that the father is the king, King Rishabhdev. He has some sons, 100 sons, out of which some became kings and emperors, and some became saints and mendicants. They became gurus. So these 9 became mendicant preachers of Krishna consciousness, following the religious precepts of the Bhagavatam. So this is the background information as to who is King Rishabhdev, who was his father, who was his mother, and then his wife, his 100 sons, and where we are at. So we are at his retirement party. So before retiring, he is giving a farewell address to his sons. Now, at this time, I should caution that Srila Prabhupada would quote King Rishabhadev's prayers, very frequently. In fact, I did a search yesterday, and it turns out that of these, the first 10 verses in this canto, in this chapter, 5 of those verses he quoted very frequently. In the top, if you took the top 200 verses he quoted, 5 of these appear in those top 200. So that is how important Srila Prabhupada considered the teachings of Lord Rishabhdev. So, in fact, on a personal note, I came across these verses. I was thinking, it would be nice if BBT came out with a special booklet, extracting only the teachings of King Rishabhadev, because in the past, we've seen that there has been teachings of Lord Kapila, teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, teachings of uh, Queen Kunti, and teachings, so many other, BBT books have come that are but extracts of, the bigger, Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita like that. And I was thinking, it would be a good idea if BBT came out, and guess what? They already did, So, but it's not called, teachings of King Rishabhdev, but actually it's called spiritual yoga. That was my title page. So this class is nothing but a plug. I'll be very obvious right away. This is nothing but a plug for this book. I looked up online at krishna.com. This is available at $1.55. It's a wonderful book. You should get one, and you should take a dozen and give it to your neighbors and well-wishers. This is a wonderful, this is a glimpse of Srimad Bhagavatam. As you can see in the cover picture, we have King Rishabhdev preaching to his 100 sons. So this is spiritual yoga, which is, in other words, this is teachings of King Rishabhdev. So now King Rishabhdev, why is this very popular? Because he indulges in what is called straight talking. So we will come to the scene. Now we are setting the scene as to, where all of this is happening. Once while touring the world, Lord Rishabhadev, the Supreme Lord, reached a place known as Brahmavarta. There was a great conference of learned Brahmanas at that place, and all the king's sons attentively heard the instructions of the Brahmanas there. At that assembly, within the hearing of the citizens, Rishabhadev instructed his sons. Although they were already well behaved, very well behaved, devoted, and qualified, he instructed them so that in the future they could rule the world. They could rule the world very perfectly. Again, I'm repeating. His sons, although they were already very well behaved, devoted, and qualified, he instructed them so that in the future they could rule the world very perfectly. So, what did he preach? Description of Bhagavad Dharma, religious principles in devotional service that transcend religious principles for liberation and the mitigation of material misery. Instructing his 100 sons, Lord Rishabhadev advised them to accept their eldest brother Bharata as their guide and Lord, and thereby serve him. Of all living entities, the Brahmanas are the best, and above the Brahmanas, the Vaishnavas are situated in an even better position. Serving a Vaishnava means serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first paragraph is basically the bulk of his teachings, the description of Bhagavad Dharma, how to engage in devotional service, even while ruling over the country or the world. And these devotional service not only transcend material principles, but they also transcend religious principles for liberation and the mitigation of material misery. So this is the highest service, devotional service. And finally, he says, as a parting advice, he says, all of you should accept their eldest brother Bharata as their guide and Lord. And Bharata, again, he's a Vaishnava, and so that would serve them well. So this is in a gist, the teachings of King Rishabhadev. Now, as I was saying, we find that King Rishabhadev, even though he's speaking to his qualified sons, he is being blunt, and he is being straightforward, and he is being very honest with his teachings. There's no beating around the bush. So why do we say that? So this is, in a nutshell, what his first 10 verses are. We can find a lot of Americanism here. I try to, put a single sentence or, couple of phrases. So in the first verse, he says, don't be a pig. Just try to purify one's existence. So, this is how he begins, So he sets the expectation at the outset that, one should not act like a pig, but one should purify one's existence. Now, the second verse, don't go to hell. seek out Mahatmas to attain liberation. Again, we find that he's being very straightforward. Like there's only two options, either you go to hell or you attain liberation. So don't go to hell, seek out Mahatmas to attain liberation. Verse 3, don't be a Grahamedhi, become a Grihastha Mahatma. Again, this is today's verse, so we will go in detail what it means to be a Grahamedhi or a Grihastha Mahatma. Number 4, don't be crazy, get smart. Again, we can take a class on each of these verses, and we can take a class for more than a day. But this is just to give a overview as to what is the theme. What is the spirit of King Rishabhadev's preaching? What's his mood? Number 5, I'm sure all of us would like this. Don't be a loser. Verse number 6, don't be a fool, attain love for Vasudeva. Number 7, I mean, there's a decimal missing. There's number 7, don't be an animal. Number 8, don't be attached to I, me, and mine. Number 9, get free by sadhu sangha and bhajana kriya. And again, he goes on in this vein, and finally he drops the hammer in verse 18, where he says, become a liberator, or else, this is the famous verse where he says that one is not qualified to be a father or a mother or a guru or a relative or a king or a master if one cannot liberate his dependents, or one cannot show his dependents the path to liberation. So this is how he ends it by saying that if you can't make your dependents liberated or set them on the path to liberation, then don't bother becoming a king or becoming a master or becoming a father, mother, guru, relative, or whatever. So these are pretty heavy words, and again we must understand this is in Satya Yuga, and he is talking to his qualified, well qualified sons, but he's he's not pulling any punches. He's giving it straight, because after all he's the supreme personality of Godhead. So we find that when it comes to discussing topics of spirituality, there are two vichara. There's two discussions that happen. There is tattva vichar and rasa vichar. So tattva vichar is where when we discuss philosophy. Rasa vichar, we talk about Leela, Krishna Katha, the pastimes, and all the rasas that go with, that were exhibited by Lord Krishna and his devotees. But we find, by example, Srila Prabhupada, in the footsteps of his parampara, he would always, engage more so in tattva vichar than in rasa vichar. Of course, he would engage in rasa vichar, on select festival days like that, but he spent dawn till dusk, even in his books, in his preaching, in his morning walks, in his room conversations. It was all based on tattva vichar. So in this vein, we find that our parampara, we get our inspiration from none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures, where we have teachings on those, which is based on hardcore philosophy. So coming back to the verse, Eva mayi se krita sauhridartha janeshu dehambaravartikeshu griheshu jayat majarati matsu na pritiryukta yavadartascha loke. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. So again, we just talked about how what is the mood of a devotee. So in this instance, it may be good to know who is a sadhu, because some people say sadhu are always kind, they're always smiling, they're always offering blessings, which is true. All of this is true. But again, this is Krishna's definition. This is Bhagavatam definition of who is a santa. Tato dussanga mutsrijya satsu sajjeta buddhiman santa evasya chindanti manovyasangam uktibihi. An intelligent person should therefore reject all bad association and instead take up the association of saintly devotees whose words cut off the excessive attachment of one's mind. So we have heard of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati using the chopping technique, right? Chopping is to basically cut off our misconceptions. Srila Prabhupada, very famous, he would always, uh, no holds barred. He would, in fact, he has said that Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, the famous, Chanakya saying, is to not to speak unpalatable truth, is true only in material circumstances, but when it comes to spiritual truths, it must be spoken freely and it must be spoken without inhibition. And so we find that this is the guidance given by Bhagavatam, that saintly devotees, their words cut off the excessive attachment of one's mind. So purport, whether he is an impersonalist or a devotee, one who is actually interested in it. So what is the bottom line? The bottom line, is whether one is a, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi, it all boils down to the motive, right? What is the motive? If we are interested in advancing spiritually, then we will heed these advice, even while maintaining our ashram. So what are the don'ts? The don'ts is those who are interested in spiritual life should not be attached to homely comforts in the company of wife, children, friends, and so forth. Now, this may be a bit shocking, or it may be because grihastha, obviously, one has to be maintaining a household, one has to be attached to one's family, children, friends. But time and again we find that Bhagavatam or even Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the definition of knowledge, right? uh, uh, asaktiranabhiswangaha putradhara grihadishu nityam cha samachittatvam ishtanishtopavattisu. So this, he says, is the definition of knowledge is to not to be overly attached to one's wife, children, and putra dhara griha adishu. So the same example is given by King Rishabhadeva, that so what is the key, right? One has to be attached to one's wife, children, friends, and so forth. So what is the key? The key is Yavadartha. That is why the title of this slide presentation is Yavadartha. So that is the key. The balance is as much as required, as much as needed. Srila Prabhupada would use the term Yavadartha Prayojana. So Yavadartha Prayojana is applicable in our daily life. So how much should we earn? What is the time we should spend collecting money? How much time should we spend dealing with materialistic people? How much time we should spend in interests other than spiritual? So the key word that King Rishabhadeva leaves us with is Yavadartha. Yavadarthascha loke. So he says, na priti yukta. So a spiritually minded person, a spiritually interested person is not overly attached. I mean, he doesn't say that he's unattached, or he doesn't say he's detached. He doesn't say that he's indifferent. No, of course he should be attached, but only to the extent required. So Preeti, again in Sanskrit, there are different words for love. It's Rati, and there's Kam, there is Preeti. Uh, so Preeti is reserved for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may love one wife, family, children, friends, and so forth, but one's heart must be reserved for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is what King Rishabhadeva is trying to teach us. Because in verse 6, he says, Preetirna yavan, the same word he uses, Preeti. Preetirna yavan mayi vasudeve namuchyate dehe yogena tavat. So unless one uh, completely loves, Vasudeva, he says, Mayi Vasudeva. So he says Vasudeva or myself, so he reveals the fact that he is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Preetirna yavan mayi vasudeve na muchyate. Otherwise, there is no hope of liberation. Na muchyate. He cannot get liberated. Dehi ogena tavat, from the repeated cycle of birth and death. So not only he gives him the instructions, but he also gives him the benefit. What happens if one follows his instructions. One should not have more than that nor less than that. As indicated herein, a householder should endeavor to earn money for the execution of Bhakti Yoga. Again, this is Prahlada's prayers, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. So we saw in the translation, he said that one should have full opportunity. So in the modern day household, unfortunately, the way the modern world is set up, one, even though we are householders, we do not get full opportunity for prosecuting our bhakti yoga. So a householder should lead such a life that he gets full opportunity to hear and chant. So this is, this is a problem, this is a question that all of us need to ponder, all of us need to introspect, and all of us need to come up with a solution, because the 9 to 5 job or the 24-hour job, or whatever the double jobs, all the the father is working, mother is working, people, kids have to go to school and college and everything. So all these engagements does not leave us with a full opportunity to hear and chant. So this is a question again, that is confronting all of us. How soon we can set our household affairs in order so that we can reserve our fullest to hear and chant. That is the solution that we all need to come up with. So are there similar quotations in other verses? Has Lord Chaitanya given such instructions? The answer is yes. This again is a famous verse. Abominable than poison. What can be abominable than poison? Ishkinchanasya bhagavat bhajanonmukhasya param param jigimashor bhavasagarasya sandarshanam vishainam atayoshitam cha ha hanta hanta vishabhakshanatopya sadhu. Greatly lamenting, the Lord then informed Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, alas, for a son who is seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, seeing a materialist engage in sense gratification or seeing a woman who is similarly interested is more abominable than drinking poison willingly. Again, so a man is known by the company he keeps. So if we surround ourselves with bodily minded people, dehambara vartikeshu, that's the word used in the verse. So what is dehambara vartikeshu? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, ahara nidra bhayamaitunam cha. So in the pretext of earning living, in the pretext of sustaining family, we put ourselves in the company of such people, and that is bound to seep on our consciousness. So that is what the scriptures are saying, that one should keep such association to a bare minimum. Again, myself included, it's easier said than done, but at a minimum, we need to be aware of this requirement, and how we will overcome, how we will meet, the requirement, it's up to us, it's up to, based on uh, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we have to come up with a solution. But at least we need to be aware of the requirement that this is not conducive, to be in the company of bodily minded people is not at all good. So, what does desire do? Again, this is a favorite verse of Srila Prabhupada. Oh my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Because, we try to satisfy family requirement, society, friendship, and love. And we go down this rabbit hole and there is no coming back, because the nature of desire by nature is merciless. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor I have even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the other dynasty. Recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. So we find that the solution to this endless desire is to engage in personal service. So Bhakti Yoga is the only solution to, Krishna again explains in Bhagavad Gita, Apuryamanam achala pratishtam, Sashanti mapnoti na kama kami. So if one, goes about satisfying every desire of his, there is no end to it, but who can attain Shanti is one who can be contented, right? One who can engage his senses, his body, mind, and soul in service of the Lord. He can be contented, right? He can be satisfied. Not the one who's trying to, serve his body, mind, and senses. Again, famous verse by Lord Chaitanya. What are the characteristics of a devotee? Asat Sangat Tyaga, Ai Vaishnavachara, Trisangi, Eka Sadhu, Krishna Bhakta Ara. A Vaishnava should always avoid the association of ordinary people. Common people are very much materially attached, especially to women. Vaishnavas should not. Vaishnavas should also avoid the company of those who are not devotees of Lord Krishna. So again, we see that time and again, the scriptures say that a man is known by the company he keeps, and so the same Prabhupada, that is preaching against society, friendship, and love, started the International Society. In fact, the previous avatar of ISKCON was called the League of Devotees. So, yes, the general society, we should be wary, we should be careful, we should be at our, alert, we should have our antennas on in the company of materialistic people, but we need to take the association of devotees. We should be in the League of Devotees. We should be in the Sadhu Sangha. We should be in a society where Krishna consciousness is practiced. So that is why Srila Prabhupada, preaching against society, friendship, and love, he founded the League of Devotees. He founded the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where devotees take care of each other. In fact, I'm reminded of an advice, when you watch an ad for, against drunken driving, right? What is the byline? The byline they say is, a friend doesn't allow his friend to drive drunk. Again, ISKCON, we are all family here, so we should be advising each other the dangers of materialistic company. If family members don't take care of each other, then who will take care of us? And that is the purpose of ISKCON. The purpose of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada built a family where the whole world can reside, so that the ISKCON devotees will take care of each other. Just like a friend, if he's a true friend, he's not going to let his pal, right? He's not going to let his buddy go home drunk. So similarly, as concerned devotees, as as a well-wisher, we should be having more such conversations. We should be hearing from scriptures. We should listen to, Srila Prabhupada preaching on these topics. We should get the book, Spiritual Yoga. It's available at krishna.com. $1.55. In fact, if you want to save on shipping, just tell them, I would prefer media mail. And, by default, they send it by UPS, but you can get it by media mail. And, you can save on that and, distribute the book to your neighbors and friends and devotees, congregation. So that is the purpose of ISKCON. The danger is there, no doubt. We are surrounded, in all corners. Again, we have to understand this is Rishabhadeva preaching in Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga, you will be hard pressed to find a materialistic person. And we are having this conversation in Kali Yuga, where Kalau Doshanidhi Rajan, right, is just an ocean of fault. So more so, we need the company. Kalau Shakti, uh, Sangye Shakti Kalau Yuge, right? In Kali Yuga, the only remedy, the only hope we have is the Sangha of devotees, like-minded devotees. So we find that from King Rishabhadev to Srila Prabhupada to all the sadhus, they are all preaching the same message, which is that engage in bhajana kriya and be involved in sadhu sangha. That's it. These two will liberate us. This will help us develop love of Godhead. This will help us advance in detachment. Bhaktir pareshanubhava virakti anyatra syat. So all of this is rooted in two practices, sadhu sangha and bhajana kriya. So with that, I would like to end my class. If there are any questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, I'll be more than happy to handle it. Thank you very much for once again giving me an opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, wonderful class. Thank you. You quoted so many nice verses. We're very fortunate to have you with us again. Thank you. This is
Thank you,
Jeeva.
Mataji. Yes, I recognize Mataji. Thank you so much. All glory to your wonderful seva.
Oh, glories to you. I really like how you emphasized how we have to look out for each other. Prabhupada wanted our movement to be like a family, and that's what a family does. Try
Yes.
to encourage and help each other in many different ways. Thank you for stressing that.
Absolutely. Yes. Take care of each other. That's the motto.
And these COVID times have really helped us develop greater engagement through Zoom. So it's been really great to have association every day, morning and night.
Yes, there is always a silver lining to a dark cloud. Uh, Definitely, because one can tune into classes anywhere in the world. I subscribe to a lot of temple classes like ISKCON, Silicon Valley, and Mayapur, Vrindavan, ISKCON Houston, of course. So so we find that we don't have to miss out, because of this COVID times. Everything is virtual, so you can subscribe and listen to all the classes you want, and it's there are fewer distractions than it used to be, because if it were again it cuts both ways, because we are not able to engage in book distribution and all the things we like to do, chanting and dancing and so forth. But at the same time, the distractions are fewer. There are no play dates for your children. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there are fewer distractions. There's no going out and whiling time, shopping unnecessarily. So this is wonderful austerity, like you said. Yeah, so it has its advantages, and we should try and make use of the circumstances to advance spiritually, so that when the time comes, we are ready to preach some more.
Yeah, personally for me, I think I've gotten more association and more scripture,
Definitely.
than I have
Association
ever
means,
in my entire life.
that's true. Association means hearing. That's what is meant by association.
Mhm.
Association means hearing and chanting. So yeah, definitely, yes. That's a good observation.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
I have a question. So coming back to the association, most of our time spent is with our family, immediate family or extended family. And it's a very common scenario where we see that not all family members are devotee or into Krishna consciousness, right? I've seen situations where some families are not into, like some members are not into Krishna consciousness, but they're not averse you following it, but other extreme scenarios where they are averse and looked down upon, and things like that. So in this situation, what's the guidance from the shastra or the acharyas? How do we balance? Should we cut off and go our way, or should we continue and try to practice as much as can?
Yes. Again, this is just my limited understanding and observation. The first thing I would like to say under such circumstances, first of all, bhakti is paramount. So what do we mean by bhakti is paramount or bhakti is the most important? What it means is that if we are fortunate to get a family that is conducive for prosecuting Krishna consciousness, then we should do that with the assistance and help of family members. Now, on the other hand, if they are neutral, right? So then we should still prosecute bhakti yoga personally without their assistance, because they're not giving any assistance, they're not providing any help. Then we should still prosecute. We should not give up our practice of bhakti yoga, but we should practice without their assistance. So there is with, there is without, and then there are instances where they are opposite. They are like they can't stand it. So in such circumstances, we should prosecute bhakti yoga against. So there is with, without, and against. Those who are conducive, those who are indifferent, and those who are opposed. No, this is the broader picture. This is the overview. This is the guidance. But each family's dynamic is different. There is no one size fit all. The thing we have to understand is, Krishna say bhajaye bada chatura. The Krishna devotee is naturally very intelligent. So one has to use one intelligence and maturity in dealing with such situations. It is not sometimes, maybe more often, it is said that it is very difficult, and it is true as well, that it's very difficult to preach to one's own relatives. It's true, many devotees have mentioned that. So be as concerned, well-wisher, it should not be confrontational. It should not be like, my way or the highway. It should not be that, I am right and you are wrong. So those things will put them off, and we don't, I see, end of the day, we want everybody to, serve and worship and surrender to Lord Krishna. Some people may take a month, some people may take a year, some people may take a lifetime. But there are things we can do is, in offering prasad, giving them kirtan CDs, giving them nice books, inviting them to, nice classes without forcing them. So we have to, be aware of where they are coming from, and instead of being confrontational, again, if somebody were to say, well, you don't have room in my home unless you stop practicing Krishna consciousness, unless you stop chanting, then guess what? You have to pack up and leave. Those are again extreme circumstances. I realize that, we're not talking about extreme circumstances here, but to the extent, we have to be forthcoming, we have to be broad-minded, and we have to act with maturity. If you ask me, that is the advice, the gurus, sadhus, and shastras say, is that, we have to be understanding, because ultimately, we are their well-wisher. We wish them well, but at the same time, we should not let them influence us. We should influence them without them knowing, but we cannot let them influence us. Like, if they are trying to influence us to break the regulative principles, then we cannot be tolerating such advice. Even though well-meaning, but that's just asking us to sin. So we have to be clear in what's to be done, what's not to be done. But the key word is maturity. We have to act with maturity under any circumstance.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I remember also thinking that we could have so many lessons from the Bhagavat, taking stories like from Rishabhadeva and Prithu Maharaj and the four Kumaras. And I was thinking we could call it like lessons from the Bhagavat, because it's from the Bhagavatam and from the Bhagavat, the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat.
Definitely, yes.
So
Even in Mahabharata, there are very famous, we call it Vidura Niti. These are the teachings of Vidura, or Yaksha Prashna, where the Lord Dharma, he appears in the form of a crane and he has a Q&A with Yudhishthira. It's called Yaksha Prashna or Vishnu Sahasranama. So we find in all of these scriptures there are sections that give the full picture. So it's not necessary that one has to start at Canto 1, Chapter 1, verse 1, and end with Canto 12, the last verse. One has to finish it end to end to get the gist of Bhagavatam. No, there are sections like you mentioned. Teachings of Prithu Maharaj, Navayogendra, so many instances. Prahalad, Dhruva Maharaj, all the preaching that goes on, in itself, they're standalone. These are standalone Bhagavat. So Bhagavat is just a compilation of individual Bhagavats. Because all of these are personal. These are a person Bhagavatas. These are Mahabhagavatas that are giving the essence of Bhagavata Vishaya. They're giving the substance of Bhagavata in their teachings. So you're right, Mataji. This is Bhagavat is nothing but a compendium or a compilation of individual Bhagavatas.
And another thing I was thinking about was how Rishabhadeva, he's teaching his son, so he can be straightforward, but he's doing it out of love. He's not just finding fault. And like our Prabhupada, he was like that. He was straightforward and cutting, calling people rascals, and he could do it. It was out of love. He had this compassion for the fallen souls. It wasn't just finding fault or to bolster oneself. He was concerned for people.
Absolutely. Srila Prabhupada would always give the example of a physician. So, if one develops a boil, so there could be two types of doctors. The first doctor is simply blowing on the boil, blowing some air, it might give some temporary relief, but that is not the permanent cure. But on the other hand, the physician who takes out a scalpel or a knife and, cuts open the boil, he is the eternal well-wisher. He is the one that is giving the ultimate solution. So Srila Prabhupada always give the example of prescription and diet, right? The prescription is to follow the regulative principles, and diet is prasadam. Chant 16 rounds, follow regulative principle. That's a prescription and diet. So a devotee should always, consider himself as a vaidya, as a physician. The physician is not, he's not interested in the short-term pleasures. If somebody has to stay away from sweets, then guess what? That's the advice that's coming in the prescription. Stay away from sweets. On the other hand, if the physician is just interested in the fees that the patient is willing to give, then he's not a well-wisher. He's just after the money. So a devotee, Prabhupada, on more than one occasion, he has given the example of a physician, where the physician is the benefactor. He is the well-wisher of the sick and people that are in trouble.
Yeah, he can really see the suffering. He understands the suffering.
Very merciful.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Gopal, was a wonderful class. I just have a question. Why did Rishabhadev act like he was dumb and he was dirty and he was in a filthy condition? Why did he have to do that?
Yes, Avadhut. Yeah, basically it is explained that he again, we find many instances where like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, he would set up camp near a latrine. Why did he do that? To avoid the company of materialistic people. That's why. Because they don't, they are keen to associate themselves. They are keen to, give a helping hand to those that are inclined, right? Ishvareta dadineshu, baliseshu, dvisetsutsa. So Madhyama Adhikari, again, Uttama Adhikari comes down to the platform of Madhya Adhikari to preach, and he discriminates, right? So to the Lord, he offers his obeisances. Tad adineshu. Uh, so to the innocent and ignorant, he gives some mercy to his, God brothers, God sisters, to his fellow devotees. He offers friendship, and to the envious, he is indifferent. So we find that Jadabharata, gave the similar example that, as if inert. So, so we find that, they engage in Avadhuta like activities. Again, they're not play acting, they're not making it up. It is their very self that, to avoid the association of materialistic persons, they behave in such, such strange behavior. Again, it seems strange to us, but not according to the Shastra. According to the Shastra, it is to be welcomed. Because they are doing that to, avoid the association of materialistic people. And ultimately, our consciousness, it is not the external behavior, but internally, how much. End of the day, it all boils down to what is our consciousness towards Krishna, or what is our how much we have fallen in love with Krishna. That is what it boils down to. So these are just the external symptoms of the internal love that they have for Krishna.
And another question, we always are attached to our children, whether we want or not, we are totally attached to our children. And then now you're saying about Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. So at that age, probably I'll be attached to my grandchildren and serving them. Is there any way out of this samsara,
It's a good question. First of all, one should be attached to one's children. That is why, we have the gift of children. But what Bhagavatam is saying is that one should not be overly attached. Right? So there's a difference between, attachment, overly attached, and being detached. So we have to understand the difference. That is why, the key word is yavadartha prayojana, as much as required. We don't want to deprive them, but again, we don't want to deprive Krishna either, because our heart is meant for Krishna, and we have to reserve our heart for Krishna. A portion of it, may be, distributed to our near and dear ones, but not, not at the cost of Krishna. So the grandchildren, that's an interesting concept, right? Because we don't find in the scriptures that, Rishabhadeva bidding farewell to his grandchildren, when, they are at a marriageable age or something. But unfortunately, this modern living has made survival a great deal that, one has to, be within the family, for babysitting, if not for anything else, just to take care of, the kids, one has to be around, to take care of their children, when the parents are busy working. So this again, it's a very, it's a modern construct. Death do us part, like, in marriage, they say death do us part, death do us part is not for a varnashrama follower, practitioner of varnashram dharma, because sannyas do us part, so brahmanas, they go through all four phases of life: brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa. So it's goodbye time when, at the end of vanaprastha, and it's time for sannyas, so leave the wife or the grandmother with the eldest son or one of his sons and move on, But again, time, place, and circumstances are different. And that is why we need to hear such verses. That is the whole point. The point is, by hearing such cruel words, seemingly cruel, by listening to some chopping techniques of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we will develop the strength, we will develop the intelligence to walk away. That is the whole point. Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, what do they accomplish? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra gives us the intelligence, gives us the backbone to take hard decisions, to seek early retirement. Like for example, Social Security, it used to be 62 years, to get full benefits. Then it became 65. Now it's 67. When it's my time to retire, maybe they'll make it 75 or something. So they won't. Nothing's easy. They won't make it easy for us to walk away from our jobs. They'll say, okay, wait until 75 and a half, and you can get full benefits. And within 6 months you pass away, and you were thinking all along that okay, after I retire, I will devote full time, but Krishna has other plans. So Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra gives us the intelligence to plot our escape route. Who else can plot your escape route? Only you can plot your escape route. So we have to be well versed in the Shastras. We have to listen to such Tattva Vichar. We have to practice on listen to devotees, giving us the hard truths. Straight Talk Express, right? One of the presidential campaign used to be called the Straight Talk Express. So we need to get on board the Straight Talk Express and develop the intelligence to take hard decisions. I mean, it's been done. We have so many examples, even in present day ISKCON, where people, devotees give up their cushy job and go to a commune of devotees for the sake of their children, and practice 100% Krishna consciousness. I mean, examples are there. So we need to be in the association of devotees. We need to hear such, the benefits of such behavior, and the risks we are taking by continued exposure to materialistic people. And we have to plot our escape route. Devamrita Swami Maharaj, he wrote a book on teachings of Jada Bharata, and the title was The Perfect Escape. So right there, so we have to plot our own escape routes. No one's going to help us. We have to, again, with the assistance of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, but it's up to us to plot our routes.
Malkipriya, if I might add 2 cents, when we get in the modern day to Kali Yuga, our children are not going to want us that much, so it's going to be a little easier to detach.
Yeah. No, Prabhuji, it's a wonderful class. I loved your class. But sometimes what happens is our adult children who are not Krishna conscious, we might need their assistance to some degree because we are getting old and we have to navigate our lives. And that becomes hard when we are dependent on them to some degree. But still we have to push them out of our lives, to a great extent, because they're not following the Krishna conscious principles, and they detract from our Krishna consciousness and do not enhance the experience. And that becomes very, very hard.
Okay. Well, the short answer is, no surprises, right? So when the kids have an expectation, where did they get the expectation from? So we are the ones that are providing the expectation. But, but if we keep telling him, hey, man, 50, I'm out, when I turn 55, I'm out, 60. So it is up to us to set the expectations. Again, like I said, it's not walking away. It's not being indifferent, like my son is in trouble and I say, hey, bye-bye, my time's up, 55 years and I'm out of here. That's not what I'm saying. One has, again, act with maturity, but it's a question of, expectations, people, we left our parents behind in India, like we didn't have any qualms, we just got up and left, So, people do, this separation, husbands and wives, work in different cities, just for the sake of their children or future or whatever, So stranger things have happened for lesser causes, And again, the faith, what is the implicit faith? Rakshishati iti Vishwaso, right? Krishna will provide. Now, let me give another again, this may seem a drastic example. So Srila Prabhupada gave an example of a big industrialist. He gave up his family for retirement. He gave up his family, he gave up his riches, he gave up the comforts of his home to transfer himself to Vrindavan. But there is one thing he did when he gave up all of this. He told his family, hey, you know, you can take all my wealth, you can take all my properties. Just on a monthly basis, you send me $200, send me $200, you send me a check for $200 to Vrindavan so that, I'll take care of my needs. Again, this was 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And Srila Prabhupada was not happy with his requirement. One may say, well, he gave up his home, he gave up his family. No. At the final years of our life, the expectation is Krishna will provide. Not that my interest will provide, or my fixed deposit will provide. No. What is the purpose of giving up one's family, society, and love and everything? To go to Vrindavan is to live with the firm faith that Krishna will provide. Of course, Vrindavan devotees will get taken care of, or maybe you need Yavadartha, again Yavadartha Prayojana. You can have a stipend for what is required. That is fine. Again, there's a big difference. In today's world, everything has been blown out of proportion, because earlier the immediate needs used to be food, clothing, and shelter, roti, kapda, and makan. Now it's not the case anymore. It's roti, kapda, makan, mortgage 1, mortgage 2, and then this is all the bills that we need to pay, and then all the cars we need to pay off, and so forth. So then iPhone 1 through iPhone 12 and beyond, future proof. So all of this has become overly complicated, that like we find ourselves in a trap, which it is. It is nothing but a trap. So the sooner we realize that we are in a trap and get the understanding and realization, then we will plot our escape route. To the extent we don't realize that all of this is a trap, again, don't get me wrong, I am in the same boat as everybody else. Just because I am giving the class, it's not like I have a better realization. That's not true. But unless we discuss these topics, unless we help each other, there is no hope. That's the point. The point is, the answer exists. It exists in Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And by collaborative, crowdsourcing, we are just crowdsourcing solutions here. By crowdsourcing, that's how we can, save each other. So that's the point. It's not easy. Nobody said it's easy. It's only gotten more complex. But we have to save prudently. We have to come up with a solution. We have to cut down our unnecessary wants. That's why, again, the key word is Yavadartha. So if there's any takeaway from this class, again, other than the fact that all of us should get a copy of that book, is that Yavadartha, as much as required. So we should meditate on that particular phrase, as much as required. So are we spending as much as required? Are we devoting time outside as much as required? So are we overdoing it? So that so this will help us get on the right track, and then our purpose will be met. Otherwise, if we are part-time devotees, guess what? We'll be back. We'll come back until we become a full-time devotee. That's the point. So until such time we do not become a full-time devotee, we will continue to be part-time devotees. I mean, that's guaranteed. Human birth is guaranteed, right? By prosecution of Krishna consciousness. But then, liberation is not. Pritirnayavan mai vasudeve na muchyate dehe ogena tavat. So if one is attached to all these, dhana jana sundari, then come back 1,000 times. So that we need to be aware. We need to be aware of the consequences, and if we are aware, then we will act accordingly. So that's the purpose of this class, is to we need to make aware. We have to help each other out. So that's the point. It's not easy. It's not easy, but people have done it. It's not. While it's not easy, it's not impossible either. So that should be the inspiration. We should take inspiration in Guru Sadhu Shastra and take the what is required. What is required. It may seem drastic, it may seem extreme, or it may seem even crazy. But hey, at some point we need to walk away.
What was that book, Prabhu, you were suggesting we should all have?
Yeah, spiritual yoga. It was on my first slide. It's available at krishna.com, store.krishna.com. It's got all the lectures of Srila Prabhupada and teachings of King Rishabhadeva.
Temple carries it. Our East Hartford temple carries it, and I think we just ordered a case of it. I think.
Wonderful.
Great.
Yes.
Save me a copy, Jiva.
Yeah,
Okay.
take a dozen.
Support the local.
Yes. Don't buy just one. Take a
Multi-priya.
dozen. Take a dozen.
I'm all for supporting local. Don't worry.
I was actually at a lecture Srila Prabhupada was giving he was giving sannyas to Guru Das in California. I think it was in 75, maybe, in California, Berkeley. And he mentioned that we should all take sannyas. And he said, not necessarily formally, but by thinking of others' welfare. And I've been thinking about that, and it makes sense to me because we're so attached to thinking of ourselves so much. So I think it aids us in overcoming this by thinking of others. That's real detachment, is thinking of others before yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, this verse, it's a definition of grihastha sannyas. I mean, in our community itself, in Hartford, we have the wonderful example of Pyare Mohan Prabhu and Jiva Aushadhi Mataji, where, they have an open door policy. They have made their home a temple, inviting, devotees, giving them the message of Krishna. I mean, this is the whole point. The point is, it's one thing to have a deity at home and call it a temple, which is good, and it's better than not having a deity. But at the same time, is it functioning as a temple? That's the question that needs to be asked. Do we have an open door policy? Is there active preaching going on? Is there distribution of books and prasad happening? That makes a difference. So here, you're right, Mataji. Srila Prabhupada said we should all become sannyasis. Yes. Either you can be a formal sannyasi by taking the vows of sannyas, or we can all become grihastha sannyas, grihastha mahatma. That is the purpose of this verse. The meaning of this verse is, to all of us, because he's preaching to his sons, and not all of his sons, we found out, became saints. Some of them became kings and emperors, and some became, Navayogendra. And he's preaching to them all. It's okay if you don't become a sannyasi. It's okay you don't become a saint, but become a grihastha mahatma. That is the purpose of Rishabhadeva. So yes, Mataji, all of us, we have to,
mentality.
may or may not take formal vows of sannyas, but internally, yeah, we should, our consciousness should be like that of a sannyas.
Like you said, prepare to make that exit, prepare to leave this world,
Right.
become detached from
Or
all.
even Grihasthavana Prastha, you can do that.
Yeah, of course. Any step, So here's the thing, suppose your retirement age is 62. If you retire at 61, that is detachment right there, because you're walking away from 1 year of pay, you're walking away from 1 year of benefits. That is detachment right there. Not that, okay, well, the retirement age is 62, but you know what? I'm going to be here for 5 more years, because, hey, I can do it, right? I mean, I got the strength, I got the intelligence, I got the capability. So let me stretch it for 5 more years. That's no. That's, you're heading in the wrong direction. So if your retirement age is 62, you retire 6 months in advance, to say, okay, I'm going to start my Krishna consciousness in full earnestness. That is detachment. That's what I'm talking about. Not that you get up and leave right this minute, no. If you can walk away, but again, we have to make plans now, I mean, I know, like we make plans for all sorts of things, for college admission, people, they start 5 to 9 plans, at the time of birth, what do you call that? If that's not planning, what else is, So we make plans all the time, for college, for retirement, 401k. When did we start putting money in 401k? I say, 30 years ago. So we make plans all the time. So we need to make plans for Krishna also. That's the point. So we need to remind ourselves, hey, how is your plan coming along? You know, how is your back home, back to Godhead plan coming along? You know, we need to be asking such questions. You know, we need to inspire each other. We need to, you know, be on the lookout. You know, that's the point. That's why we have a family. You know, otherwise what? You know, just to, you know, mingle and, you know, talk material stuff. No, we don't need. You know, that is plenty. That company is plenty. You know, we need the company of well-wishers and devotees who can point us in the right direction. You know, that's why we have, you know, we seek the company of Grihastha Mahatmas who are, you know, guiding lights for all of us. You know, this is how it is to be done. You know, can't do it today, fine. Do it tomorrow. You can't do it tomorrow, well, do it next week. You know, but we need to, you know, get tuned. We need to make plans. You know, we need to start making plans. You know, end of the day, you know, Krishna helps those who help themselves. You know, so then you will find that help is forthcoming. You know, and things become a breeze. You know.
It's a very good point, Prabhu. I always preach to my Indian friends, especially. We make plans for our children's college. We make plans for our children's wedding. We make plans for our retirement.
Everything,
You know, we
everything,
make plans
yes.
for everything, but nobody thinks about making plans for your afterlife. You know what I'm saying? Like, what happens at the end of my life? Where
Yes.
am I going? That is
Yes.
also a plan that we need to make. And nobody thinks that it's for me. You know, it is for me that I'm making that plan, just like I'm making my plan for my retirement, for my, you know, children's, you know, special occasions and everything. But
Yes.
I should make that plan for my afterlife, which is also for me. And that is just as important, if not the most important plan that I'm making.
This is exactly Prahlad Maharaja's teachings. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnum. Swartha
Mhm,
colloquially literally means selfish, but yeah,
mhm.
but the self is not the body, the self is the soul. Nate vidu, they don't know. Swartha gatim hi Vishnum. So Vishnu is the destination of the self. You know, nobody knows. You know, that exactly the, you know, the right point. One should be aware of oneself, you know, and oneself is dependent on, you know, attaining the lotus feet of Krishna or Vishnu. That's exactly right, Prabhu. Wonderful. So if there are no more questions or comments, I would like to take leave. I again, you know, thank you for the opportunity. Personally, I prefer to hear more than speak, but again, you know, I was given short notice with nowhere to say no. You know how that works in the family. So I offer my obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva
Sindhubhyev
cha
cha patitanam
patitanam pavanebhyo
Putitanam
vaishnavebhyo
Pavanebhyo
namo namaha.
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti
Hare
Vaishnava
Krishna,
Vrinda
Prabhuji,
ki
very
jai.
wonderful
Hare
class.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhuji.